So we haven't even scratched the surface of the issues here, have we? But we have established already. Let's use the checklist, because this is video number 2. What did we go over in video number 1? Well, we went over, at least in part, that CARE and TFCC worked together to do this. Abuse over Natalie, they wanted to pretend that that was a delusion, even after knowing that it was true. They wanted to pretend that the abuse were delusions, even after being shown evidence that it's true. Now, these guys repeatedly, let me show you this again. This is the very beginning of this video, so that way anybody who hasn't seen the first one, you at least get to see the evidence that I'm telling the truth. Well, I had to adjust the lights just a little bit, that way you guys could see it a little bit easier. So, again, recap. This is the supposed investigator that I was supposed to send evidence to of the threats and abuse and assaults against me. Here's one of the threats against me. Not only did her coworkers, knowing that these things were true, not only did they pretend that these were delusions, like, yeah, these are absolutely not delusions. This is the kind of crap that people wanted to send me. This is horrible. So what did I do? I sent this to them as evidence, and they pretended that I was threatening them. That's right. They used the evidence that people were threatening me and pretended that these were threats against them. In court. That's right. People who were not qualified to decide if I was delusional or not were the ones who came to see me. These are called rubber stamps, Mary Lindsay and John Holland. Now you got to see that they at least acknowledged that there was abuse happening, that these were not delusions, with Catherine Cius all the way back on January 28th of 2023. This one is 5/12/2024. And Mary Lindsay is still writing these things, trying to push the suicidal and homicidal thing, regardless of the fact that I'm not trying to kill myself or anyone else. I'm trying to get heard, and she is very well aware of this. And she's also being an antagonistic, well, not a very nice person. You know what words I would use for that. So she wrote, when asked the safety questions, what are the safety questions? She wanted to ask me about suicide and homicide over and over and over again. What are the 3 things they're supposed to care about? Suicide, homicide, yes. But what about if we're being abused? It's not just if we want to abuse somebody else. It's also if we are being abused. Now, in the first thing here with Miss Cius, you can see, let me see, is this the right one? Catherine Cius. This was all the way back in 1/28/2023, and she wrote down that he has been a victim of abuse as someone who is homeless. She did actually acknowledge that I was being abused. She kind of had to, because a guy named Mike went in there and told her that I was being abused. Told her about some of the, well, told the hospital staff about the abuse. Let's see. One moment, I'm going to pause this till I find it. Alright, so here's one thing that I speak about very often, is people want to pretend that PTSD is schizophrenia. Now this lady, Catherine Cius, despite the screwed up situation, all these people care about is if I'm suicidal or homicidal, because I'm trying to turn them in and they know it. If I'm suicidal or homicidal, they can use that against me and prevent actual evidence, like the stuff I'm showing you, from being shown in court. So this right here shows what she wrote is extensive period of time homeless and targeted abuse due to this status. Well, it's not just due to this status, and here's something that these people are not acknowledging. At least she acknowledged that this stuff is happening, that I am being targeted. It is targeted abuse, and due to this status. All right, it says quick escalation followed by an inability to manage behavior is a trauma exposure symptom. Well, it's not an inability to manage behavior. I manage my behavior extremely well. However, when I'm being bullied, antagonized, or psychologically, well, you can even call it psychological torture if you want, but it is abuse. Social isolation is abuse. And when you try to turn these people in, they coordinate together to socially isolate you. So you can see here months later, her coworker Mary Lindsay is writing stuff like, let's see, blah 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 blah. Stated no to suicidal ideations or homicidal ideations. When asked the safety questions, he became increasingly agitated, combative, and continued on fixed delusions based on feeling he is being targeted. Returned to the incident in 2017. Yeah, that's when Natalie was killed, wasn't it? Was unable to engage in a conversation based on his actions, only on the actions of others. Well, I knew what my actions were. I'm not pretending I didn't bash my goddamn skull off the wall. I'm also not pretending that I didn't use my blood to write on the walls with. It's not because I just wanted attention for attention's sake. They wouldn't let me have a pen, wouldn't let me have a pencil, and meanwhile, I wasn't suicidal or homicidal. I was literally forced to harm myself to try to get somebody there so that I could turn in abuse. These people are already at this point, we've gotten to see, they've been covering up for the fact that they were aware of this abuse the whole time. And they're really pushing heavy the schizophrenic delusional crap they're trying to push here. See, while Catherine Cius admitted that I was being targeted, now, later, after I have to turn in the fact that I was being abused repeatedly, they want to play this situation where all of a sudden it's a figment of my imagination. And that being targeted is also a figment of my imagination. And then she wrote, let's see. Patient continues to be agitated when this writer tried to engage in his actions of self-harm. And then she writes, quote, or ... they made me do it due to the environment. Oh, well, out of everything said, that's all she remembers? Huh. Wonder if she even wrote that correct. But we don't have any evidence of it. We're having to take her word for it. Meanwhile, having gone through their very own information here, it shows that obviously their word cannot be taken seriously. Obviously, they are abusing the court system. Obviously, they are knowingly abusing the court system, lying to the judge, lying to the courts, and the DA does the same thing. When pressed to look at the self-harming behavior, he began to elevate and escalate voice. Now, here's the thing. She talks to me like I'm a dog, refused to allow me to get a sentence out. How the fuck does she know what's going on? She doesn't. She's going out of her way not to. The cops agitate the situation and then call mental health. That's as simple as it is. And they did this repeatedly while I was locked up on false charges for improper use of 911 for turning in. Well, you guys got to see the assaults. There are so many of them. And then it says, due to the yelling and screaming, he continued to do even after asked to lower his tone. Well, what about their tone? And who says I was yelling and screaming? Let's get their evidence on that. Don't get me wrong, I do my fair share of yelling and screaming, but am I being agitated? Am I being talked over? Am I being physically assaulted while I'm screaming? What's going on? Is there a reason that I'm screaming, or am I just screaming for no reason whatsoever? And of course, become combative and verbally accusatory and assaulting, except the things that I verbally accuse them of are true, and I didn't assault them. Oh, verbal assault, right? Whatever. I'm having to take actual physical assaults. I'm being locked up for trying to turn these people in. And what am I having to deal with? I have to turn these people into themselves. This is what they do when you try to turn them into themselves. They don't care. They will literally pretend that things that they already know to be true are delusions. So, of course, the patient continues to be fixed on delusions and unable to determine what is beyond his delusions of other people consistently hurting him and all the accomplices including this writer to his current situation. Well, what was that writer doing? All of these situations should have been recorded for my safety. That's the thing about being an at-risk and vulnerable adult. Once you have to turn something in, if you have to turn it into your predators and they have a position of power like this, regardless of all the evidence that they've already destroyed, because there's all sorts of stuff that was not included in this. This is what my lawyer paid for. Or sorry, my private investigator paid for all of it and got only this. All the times that I went in to try to turn in assaults, not in here. And they just kept on playing this out, by the way, over and over and over again. Or they pretend that what they know to be true are actually delusions. I mean, this is far after the fact, and they just kept on doing it. When one of the things I'm going to be showing you here is the dates on it. Again, I know I did that in the first video, but I want you to notice that this from Deputy Taylor, he signed it on 6/19/2024. So this is after the fact, of course, for part of it. But then there's the part where I finally got to meet Tammy Waddell. See, through this, when they realized what a big mistake that they had made, well, then they tried to just write out the Natalie Bollinger thing. And here repeatedly they wrote things like continues to be fixed on a fixed delusion over the death of his friend, and so on and so forth. Let's see. They wrote here, Sean has observed to be restrained in a restraint chair. Now, this is Tammy Waddell, I believe. Let's see. They ignore most of this stuff. Within expected range. Sean agreed to the safe word no means no. And by the way, the deputies didn't go along with any of this stuff. They ignored all of it. The only mention of Rebecca Connors, like, that is right there. And there should have been a lot more. I hadn't met Rebecca Connors by that point, but she committed a lot of crimes. So the situation with them pretending that the situation with Natalie was a delusion, with them pretending that the assaults were a delusion, them pretending that me trying to turn it in was a delusion, and of course, me accusing them of preventing me from showing evidence is, of course, a bad thing too. What happens when they put you on suicide watch? It eats up your time and prevents you from having access to your telephones that are full of evidence. They also get to prevent you from recording, which makes it their word versus yours, which is proof positive in all this. All they have to do is hold it off long enough for you to stay in jail, long enough for them to put this stuff in court, and it gets used against you in the next court date, and the next one, and the next one. Meanwhile, these people literally are committing felonies. All right, these aren't misdemeanors. This is used in my medical records. This is used in my court records. And these people have gone out of their way to intentionally lie and misrepresent the situation. No one should be forced to self-harm because these people don't want to do their jobs. 100% of the time, what they want to do is deflect. There's 3 things they have to do something about. If you want to hurt yourself, they'll focus on that one exclusively. Or pretend that you want to hurt somebody else. Because you're angry about being assaulted and being blown off, so you're being assaulted repeatedly. They pretend that you're out to hurt them. Yes, you must be homicidal because you're angry about being assaulted. They want to pretend that you telling them about people trying to bully you into killing yourself is the same as you trying to kill yourself, right? And what's the third one? How about if you're being harmed? That's the one thing in all of this they want to ignore. They want to pretend that the harm is a delusion, even after having evidence that it's not. They wanted to use evidence of assaults and threats against me, especially the threats against me, to pretend that I was threatening them. And then they wanted to lie about that situation in court and pretend again, like I said, that those things are delusions. Now, we've gotten to see they're absolutely not, and we will show them one more time for everybody. That right there. That's their investigator. This is the stuff that people are sending me. This is obviously a screenshot of threats and harassment and hate crimes. And there's a bunch of it. Like, it's not like it's just 1 or 2 of them. All right. Now, out of all of this, what part is it they want to pretend that is a threat against them? I was told to send videos, I was told to send text messages, and I was told to type the stuff they're doing to me so that obviously they have a record of it. This one right here. Is that a threat against Kylie? No, it's a threat against me. How about this one? This recorded audio. Is this a threat against Kylie or is it a threat against me? This is Massam Vijan. I spent 15 months in jail because this man came at me with a pipe not once but twice. Of course, it was, what was his name? Timothy Sadler, who refused to investigate the situation with Molly, refused to do anything about the situation with James Murphy, wouldn't do anything about the situation with, 7 different situations.
Don't get me confused, man. I ain't no fucking DC. I'll stab you right in your fucking eyeball and show your fucking ass. It's my fucking heartbeat.
John Holland knowingly lied in court to try to prevent me from showing this evidence, to try to prevent the courts from even bothering to take a look. Repeatedly, they have used the quote-unquote mentally ill crap to prevent me from having justice, from getting justice. I have to hide in this tent in somebody's backyard and almost never leave because, when I leave, I have to deal with predators. Maybe I will run into them and maybe I won't, but I do know that every time that I've gone to the police about it, it's been blown off. I'm a disabled person. I can't run away from these people. We've also got Terry Syverson on here, and God, she's the worst. So these people have their names on my papers. Who's Terry Syverson, and why didn't I ever get to see her? Why didn't I ever get to talk to her? She's making decisions. She's the only one through all of this who actually has the qualifications. What are these people doing? They're trying to cover for their coworkers who committed felonies. They're trying to cover for police officers who committed felonies. Then there's a situation where, of course, my booking notes details a lot of the head games that they played, a lot of the lies that they told. I mean, I kept these records for a reason. I wrote this while I was in jail because there's no way, obviously, that I can go through this all in an hour video. This will take months, if not years, to go through. That's from 15 months in jail here, and it's only a small part of it. There's a lot of stuff they wouldn't allow me access to. Like, they won't allow me access to any of the evidence that shows how hard I was trying to turn in the assaults and the abuse, and how they were just procrastinating and pretending that I was delusional long enough for them to destroy body camera evidence, which they get to do after a year. They pretend that you didn't try to turn it in. Meanwhile, I also save this stuff here because it shows that I did. I did try to turn in the abuses, but I was prevented from showing evidence because I was locked up, incarcerated. Now, the people that care, getting run around in circles this whole time. You know, I'm told these are the people who are supposed to help me as a disabled person so that I can turn in the abuse, so that I can safely turn in the abuse, I should say. A disabled person without advocacy, especially on the streets, and especially if they're male, and especially if they're an adult, has to especially worry about this type of abuse. There's a lot of evidence, but it's a matter of going through it all. I mean, we've also got the stuff here written by Fenewald showing that he was aware of the Natalie Bollinger situation. We've got stuff here from other inmates. This is about a situation where one of my public pretenders didn't want to do her job, and she wanted to play victim by pretending that I was yelling. And obviously, that inmate, what he had to write, showed that he didn't hear any yelling. It's because she was in the process of playing victim. When I tried to turn it in, of course, she blocked my number, but they lied about that in court. Yeah, my own attorney. So I had them verify the phone number, and Deputy Moody confirmed that the phone number and the chirp thing listed as restricted are listed as restricted on AIC Schwartz's chirp and unit phone login. Schwartz is unable to contact that number from any available device. Literally anything that they could do. I got 60 days for, what do you call that? Speedy trial. Instead, they denied my right to speedy trial for 15 months and then had to drop the charges. They charged me as a felon because a man came at me with a pipe for something that literally, if they could charge me with something, was only a misdemeanor. They have repeatedly, these officers, arrested me for improper use of 911 for trying to turn in those officers and the people who they're helping to get away by not doing their jobs, by not investigating. Timothy Sadler even asked some of those people, well, would you like to be victims? Like, oh my God. And we've gotten to see that John Holland and Mary Lindsay did in fact do these things. They did pretend that the evidence showing the threats against me, that they wanted to pretend are delusions, they wanted to pretend are threats against them. Absolutely not. The evidence we already went through and showed that Catherine Seas knew these weren't delusions on January 28, 2023. Kylie knew on 4/15/2024. John Holland and Mary, they're real heavy slander on this paperwork, and the crap from Tammy Waddell and all them came after that. The stuff with Tammy Waddell, they still keep on trying to pretend the schizophrenic thing. They just leave out the Natalie Bollinger part. They leave out the part where I'm being abused over something that they can easily look up. Instead of these people pretending that I'm delusional over the death of my friend, yeah, we weren't friends, okay? When she died, we weren't friends. We had been friends. We were friends for a while. But when she was killed, no, we absolutely weren't friends. She was somebody that I cared about. I didn't want bad things to happen to her. I didn't want her to be killed. But I certainly wanted people to stop harassing me and harming me. So this video's time is about up. I'm sorry there was so much rambling on this, but there's a lot to it. When you've forced a person who has spent, by this time, over a year, okay, this is 5/12/2024. By the time somebody has spent over a year taking this abuse and trying to turn it in and being treated like it's a delusion, like, yeah, these guys don't get to play this anymore. And of course, there's the body camera evidence. They'll destroy any body camera evidence, and they already have in most of these situations. Situations where I was trying to turn in abuse, where I was trying to turn in the threats and assaults, and instead of doing something about it, I was sent in circles to these places that literally will only help out drug addicts at this point. The money is all in these drug places, but the drug places don't help these people either. They do just enough to get their fucking paychecks. So, of course, over and over again in this stuff, they try to pretend that Natalie Bollinger's a delusion. And here, you notice this is the stuff from Tammy Waddell. They just stopped talking about that. Yep. She just left all information about that out. All of these people leave everything that I told them about the abuse out and write the word delusion instead. Now, how many times did I try to turn this stuff in? Out here, not hurting myself. How many hundreds of times did I try to turn in abuse that they continued even after the fact? The DA, CARE, TFCC want to continue either A, pretending that it's a delusion still, or B, brushing it under the rug, pretending it doesn't exist, which allows this slander to continue to be used to harm me in court and prevent me from having an honest court date or having a safe place to live even. These things need to be taken seriously. I'm supposed to call tomorrow morning. Hopefully, I'm able to talk to Sean Hubert at CARE and also Marie Miller at CARE. The stuff about them destroying medical records and other evidence, same as CARE did here, or sorry, TFCC did here. Yeah, we've got paper evidence from them. That's the evidence I'm trying to turn in. Not just my accusations, but the actual evidence that it's not just an accusation. Then, of course, we've got my psychological evaluations. Here's one. Here's another two of them and some Tillamook records. There's a lot of stuff here. But I'm also overwhelmed, and I'm having to post this stuff on YouTube and Facebook to show my intent. Because many, many, many times when my intent has been to turn in these police officers or these quote-unquote social workers who refuse to do their jobs, if I speak my intent before court or before I go in to talk to these people, and then I go in and talk to these people and they get abusive and pretend that these things are delusions, at least I've got proof that before I went in, I said what I was planning on doing. And exactly what I tried to do. But if it's not what they want to hear, if it doesn't fit what they want to hear, they're not going to listen. Why did I have to act like an asshole through any of this? Well, because these people have already decided that I'm an asshole, and they're not going to hear anything that doesn't sound like asshole because they've already decided. This is how it works with social bias. This is how it works with teaching people to hate certain people. You want to teach them to hate the homeless. You want to teach them to hate the poor. You want to teach them to hate the mentally ill or to be so afraid of them, right? But I've seen homeless people out here who are schizophrenic, and most of them are not violent, and many of them people are violent against. We got a lot more here to go through because we have to go through the multiple attorneys who refused to do their jobs as mandatory reporters, including Marina Spencer, who wanted to claim that she wasn't a mandatory reporter. And she's the one who the telephone wasn't working. The Deputy Moody had to write that stuff. But the thing is, Lieutenant Silvera, as well as my attorney, had both been predatory towards me at that point by refusing to do their jobs, right? So by that point, Lieutenant Silvera had already pulled his deputies assaulting me on multiple occasions situation and was, well, trying to prevent me from turning that in while he's supposedly working together with my attorney, who I'm having to try to turn in. And they're supposed to try to figure out what's wrong with the telephone. Well, instead, they pretended that there was nothing wrong with it, that I was able to call the whole time. And that's not the truth. They knew it wasn't the truth. And then, of course, in order to prevent me from being allowed what my rights are, they continued to pull this mentally ill BS. When I didn't have an attorney, they'd pull the mentally ill BS. When I did have an attorney, my very first attorney showed outright he wasn't willing to do his job. He was just willing to pretend that I was schizophrenic and delusional because it makes his job super easy and he gets paid for doing nothing. And meanwhile, I'm told by attorneys that when this stuff happens, I have to go to the police, or they primarily tell me to go to friends and family and then turn it into the police. The police tell me to get an attorney. That's their joke. When you try to turn them in and you're forced to turn them into themselves, they'll tell you to get an attorney, or you can get a hold of your attorney when you get out, or the state has provided you with an attorney, and then your state provided attorney says it's not their job. Meanwhile, you're being victimized, and it's nobody's job to do anything about it, and everybody's playing stupid. So how much of this is okay? These people are aware that this is happening. They're aware that it's the truth. Why am I being forced to go to YouTube again over this crap? The lady from CARE, who's apparently one of the board of directors, I did talk to her today for a few minutes. Well, let's see what time it is. I don't actually know how late it is. It looks like it is 12:14, so it's pretty early in the morning. Now, obviously, showing you guys all of this stuff from Mossam Vachon, this is very condemning, and you'd be afraid of him too if he sent you shit like this. Meanwhile, you get to see the threats yourself. You get to hear the threats yourself. You can recognize that those are not delusions. Like, that's literally the situation that they wanted to use to pretend that I was threatening them. It's obviously evidence. I was told to send them the evidence. The paperwork in here. Some of these court dates are the situation where Judge Trevino wanted to order me to do these things. By calling me mentally ill, they denied me all of my rights and continue to deny me all of my rights, and I'm not allowed to be frustrated. I'm not allowed to have this tone of voice while they're allowed to talk to me like this. So, live a little, right? You just got to love yourself. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. These are not solutions to stopping abuse, especially coordinated systemic abuse. All of these people are mandatory reporters. It is their job by law to drop whatever they're doing and turn this shit in. And because they didn't, they have to try to pretend that these are delusions or lies. Their own paperwork shows that they were aware before this that they weren't delusions or lies. The evidence sent to them shows that these were not delusions or lies. Now, there's a bunch more that I can show. A whole bunch more where they keep on trying to pretend that I'm some horrible person who's freaking out for no reason. Obviously, these are not for no reason. So at 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm supposed to call them. Hopefully, they'll coordinate to actually look at the evidence. And hopefully, they will actually listen to me about my concerns instead of talking over them like they don't matter or pretending they can't do anything about it. No, this is systemic abuse. There is no statute of limitations on this, and it is not civil. Now, there's plenty of civil stuff that goes along with this. Yes, I could sue the living shit out of them if I had money and a steady roof over my head and a steady address. The steady address is supremely important. These guys, of course, my psychological evaluations and my evaluation with Leslie Carter show that I am autistic. I do have PTSD. And of course, they tried to rubber stamp me out of that. Now, my very first attorney in this case, his name was... God, it don't matter. I'll remember in a few minutes. But him and the person who was supposed to be his private investigator, that was useless. They had already decided what they were going to do. And the mental health evaluation, he wasn't willing to look at any evidence or look up any evidence or listen to my story. He had already decided we were going to do the mental health thing, and that's how it was going to go. And he set up the mental health evaluation for months after my trial. Well, over a month after my trial was supposed to start. I'm like, no, dude, you need to do your job. But the judge allowed him to get away with this. They also allowed me to be victimized and brutalized in the jail over and over and over again. The inmates who were bullying me were rewarded by the guards. Of course, we got to get their body camera evidence and their facility evidence for that, don't we? And how are we going to do that when everybody's playing stupid and pretending that it's okay for police officers and mental health to take advantage of disabled victims?